Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. It's
Is my screen visible now?
not yet. It was there, but now it's not there.
Now?
Not yet.
Is my screen visible now?
Okay.
So good evening all students and Professor Srinivasan. Uh, before I proceed, before stating Lusin's theorem, I will also have a brief recap of what measure theory really, basic measure theory. Then I will proceed to Lusin's theorem. So a brief review of measure theory. So measure space for me, for the time being, if those who are not comfortable with measure spaces, you can take X to be a finite interval on the real line, A be the Borel sigma algebra, and mu be the countably additive set function. At the time being, mu is only a function that is given a subset of a Borel set, you know how to assign a number. So for the time being, assume that mu is just this. Then as the Lebesgue measure, you must have seen the Lebesgue that define trying to approximate sets from inside as well as outside is both ways is totally hopeless. That is, there are sets which outer, I mean, which can be approximated from within and out, but there is some difference. So the whole that was roughly speaking, of course, but the point is we can define an outer measure based on this set function. For example, you can take the Lebesgue measure, length of interval a comma b is b minus a. For you can define that and try to cover your sample set with several closed interval, open intervals, and then you can see uh, once it is covered, you find the you add the lengths of all the intervals, and then uh, infimum over all such coverings, and the number you will get will that will be mu star of that set. Now how do we define Lebesgue measure? I will just have a very brief one sentence recap. That is, you first of all have Borel measure and you attach subsets of null sets, that is declaring them to have measure 0. Yes, that is, subsets of null sets don't matter to us. So given a for example, in this, U could be a Borel set. The symmetric difference is designed exactly to address this. U could be a Borel set and V could be a null set. So I take U minus V plus union V minus U. Something it amounts to the same thing as what is written. Union minus intersection. That is, once this is done, what is happening is to a Borel set, we are attaching symmetric difference with a null set. Okay, and declaring these all such sets to have to be Lebesgue measurable. That is made present in the next point. That is a subset A in X. It will be called mu measurable, provided that for you it can be approximated with the set from the sigma algebra, so that the outer measure of their symmetric difference is less than epsilon. So this is just those who are not comfortable with this symmetric difference, this is equivalent to the carotheric. It is easy to check actually, and it is the same as the carotheric construction of outer measure. So next, this is so far for the Lebesgue measure, and for most of the times x will be some interval of the real line, finite mostly. N will be the Borel sigma alpha, where we attach to them the subset of null sets, and mu will be the Lebesgue. So this is something not unfamiliar to you. You can go back to the basic Lebesgue measure on finite interval. So modes of convergence. So already in calculus course, you must have studied that uniform convergence, that is limit of continuous functions need not be continuous. That is, unless the convergence is uniform on compact sets, the limit of even pointwise convergence is a weak concept. That is, whatever converges uniformly will converge pointwise. Whatever converges pointwise, obviously it is almost everywhere convergence, and we will see examples of each of these. That is why these implications 1, 2, 3, 4 in that order, they are strong. I mean weaker conditions. None of these implications, 1 implies 2, implies 3, implies 4. None of these can be reversed, as we shall see. But before that, the fourth deserves some attention. We, for example, we take. I'll start with an example first. Take an example of the functions x mapping to x raised to n on 0, 1. This converges at every point to 0, right? I am removing the corners 0 and 1. So at every point it is converges to 0, and it cannot converge uniformly. The convergence cannot be uniform simply because if you take a full subset of 0, 1 with full Lebesgue measure, then it has to contain some intervals with, I mean, an interval containing 1, open interval of this type a, 1. But every such, no matter how small such an interval is, it has to contain points from E. So this example serves a purpose, that is almost everywhere convergence. It doesn't imply uniform convergence. That is, it is converging. Even if we include the endpoints, the convergence is failing only at the point 1. So almost everywhere convergence did not imply uniform convergence. So going back, uniform 3 implies 1 cannot be reversed. That is, and you have already seen in that 2 implies 1 is not true, of course. That is, pointwise convergence does not mean uniform convergence of continuous functions, even in case of continuous functions. And 2 implies 3, but that cannot be reversed. More interestingly, what we have is this given a measure space. We'll take it to be finite for the time being. And convergence is measure means that if you have a sequence of functions, and it is said to converge into a mu measurable function, provided for every positive C, the set where fx differs from fnx, the set of all such x. So this set it will have some measure, but as it might have some positive measure a priori, but as this measure shrinks to 0 actually as n goes to infinity. So take a pause and check out this definition. That is the previous example, the convergence was in measure also. That is the previous example we had almost, sorry. Yeah, this example, this is almost every convergence, obviously, because only one, but and so consequently is a convergence in measure, and it is easy to prove that 3 implies 4. If it is converging everywhere, there are estimates, or you can estimate this quantity measure of f minus fn, and uh, it has to grow smaller and smaller intuitively as n grows. So this limit n tends to infinity, measure of the set where you have a discrepancy is 0. Any questions so far about convergence in measure? Okay, I'll proceed. This example is done, which serves to show that almost everywhere convergence does not imply uniform convergence. So, but one question is, the whole lecture is based on the following. Before I proceed, let me mention that 2 implies 3 implies 4. So which of these implications can be reversed? But simple examples show that none of these can be reversed. So, but if we assume, do they can these be reversed under some additional hypothesis? That is, convergence measure, for example, does not imply almost everywhere, but under some additional conditions on the sequence as well as the function, as well as the measure space, can this be reversed? That is the whole basis of two measure theorems which we are going to discuss now. One is Egorov's theorem, which will be used to prove Lusin's theorem. Okay. So Lusin's theorem, it uses lots of results. It is not that obvious or easy to prove, but essentially the idea is this: what is the relationship between almost everywhere convergence and convergence in measure? So
So can you show like 1 and 2 once more?
yes, yes.
Can you show that conditions 1 and 2 just once more?
Yeah, sure, sure. This one, modes of convergence.
Yeah.
Fourth condition, that is convergence in measure.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
So the example shows that almost everywhere does not mean uniform about convergence, but there is a partial sort of converse that Egorov's theorem says that if I have a finite measure space with a finite non-negative measure and a sequence of measurable functions as well, and if converges almost everywhere to a finite limit, all these assumptions are important. So none of this can be skipped actually, because f of x almost everywhere it converges to fn of x converges almost everywhere to fx. The convergence is almost uniform. That is for it can be approximated x x epsilon, for which approximates the original set x with accuracy less than epsilon, and fn converges to f uniformly. So the whole theorem is that the whatever previously we had, that this almost everywhere convergence is convergence, most uniform in the sense we can have sets arbitrarily close to the whole on which this convergence is uniform. Note also that epsilon cannot be taken to be 0 here. That is, of course, these are not equivalent. And that is the proposition, next proposition. I'm giving that example here. That you can have a sequence of measurable functions that converges to 0 in Lebesgue measure. Zero means the function, this zero means zero function, but it is not going to converge at any point. So such a function, such a sequence exists, and actually it is not very difficult to construct it. It is, you should certainly give it a try, because all it involves is some Cantor set like sort of concept. And all the sequence involves only step functions. So it is certainly worth giving a try. And this shows that the implication here, convergence in measure, it does not, the convergence almost everywhere defines, implies convergence in measure, obviously, but the reverse is of course not true. The converse is not true. However, we have another result which mentioned, because it is used in the proof of Lewin's theorem, partial converse. That is, under some additional hypothesis, almost every convergence is measured plus something else should imply convergence almost everywhere. The additional hypothesis is as follows. In the previous example, I mentioned that such a subsequence is constructed using Cantor-like sets, and it is easy to see that it is not. I mean, if you get the if you can construct such an example which does not converge at any point, it will always have a subsequence of major sequence. The whole sequence may not converge at any point, but you will have a convergent subsequence. Convergent meaning convergent in almost everywhere. Okay, so
The file disappeared for some reason. Okay, it's coming.
yeah, is it showing now?
It has come. Yeah, it has come. I don't know. Yeah,
It has come. Okay.
it has come.
Sorry, the internet connection is sometimes interrupted, but so convergence in measure does not imply almost everywhere, but there is a partial converse, that there is a subsequence, no matter which sequence of measurable functions, which does not converge almost everywhere. You choose, it will have a subsequence which does converge in measure almost everywhere, right? So this is the statement of this theorem. Result was proved by Rees, that if you have a finite measure space, and if some sequence of measurable functions converges to some mu in measure, then there is a subsequence that converges to f almost everywhere. That is, it is very much like the some basic result in real analysis, that a bounded sequence has a convergent subsequence, or it is very much basically we are going to classify the I mean this can I mean roughly speaking, this is the characterization of pre-compact, that is pre-compact subsets of a certain pre-compact meaning its closure is sequentially compact. So that apart, if we have a sequence that converges to in measure, then it is, we always have a subsequence which is converging almost everywhere. So now this is another interesting question, because we have also considered this uniform convergence, etc., and which is certainly gives good results on continuous functions. So what we will consider is how far are continuity and measurability, these two, related. Okay, So for every I'll consider a finite interval on the real line. There is a small result that convergence in measure is a weak enough notion so that uh, if I have a measurable function and a sequence of continuous functions, then it can always be approximated by a sequence of continuous functions, provided we choose convergence in measure. That is, so this is certainly not true about this pointwise or this any of the weaker notions of stronger notions of convergence actually. However, that convergence in measure, if I have these functions converging in measure to f can always be chosen to be continuous. That is the point of the lemma. And I will sketch its proof briefly. So suppose, imagine that you are given a function, measurable function f on a finite interval. That is interval of finite Lebesgue measure. And so you define, the trick is to define this function. Keep the function untouched for if its value is up to n, and after that define it as n times sine of n. That is, it is nearly constant depending upon its sign. And that is, it is going to be either plus n or minus n if f of n is very large. So basically, this is a sort of cutoff for the cutoff function for f. You are trying to approximate f with a function up to unless and until its value is less than or equal to n. And these functions, because f is measurable, these are also measured, and outside they are constant. That is n times signum of n, or maybe plus or minus, at least a step function, that is plus or minus n. So clearly these functions are GNs are measurable, and these converge pointwise to f. That's also easy to see because measurable is measurable with the set where f is not defined, or rather it is a value. If all we allowed the f to take infinite values, such the values will be on a null set. So these functions Gn converge to f pointwise as n goes to infinity, and pointwise implies in measure. That's what we have seen, that uniform is the strongest, then comes pointwise, then almost everywhere, and finally measure. So here we are dealing with pointwise convergence, which in turn implies almost everywhere convergence trivially, and in turn it implies convergence in measure. And each Gn is simply measurable functions. How do you basically define measurable functions? That is, you take simple step functions, and you simple step function meaning a linear combination of characteristic functions of finite intervals. You take all such linear combinations, and given any function from R, that is real line to real line, it is difficult to approximate. The whole idea is it is difficult to approximate it from within, that is from below as well as from above. That is roughly speaking the whole thing. That's why we take positive valued simple step functions, their limit, uniform limit, and we subtract another such function, that is which is a uniform limit of positive step functions, that is f plus minus f minus. That is how f will look like. It can, because it is measurable, it will split into this part, and f and fn being f plus and f minus being further uniform limits of simple functions. And so f is measurable. So basically, it is nothing complicated. I'm just unwinding what a measurable function means It is means f is measurable. So gn is also gn is approximating f up to a cutoff level. So all these are uniform limits of simple step functions. Why uniform limit? Because this interval has finite Lebesgue measure. And we just verify this claim that every measurable function can be approximated by a sequence of approximated in measure by a sequence of continuous functions. This can, reduced to verifying it for simple step functions and uniform limit of simple step functions, to be more precise. So that that will follow easily from the corresponding result for simple step functions. So given this lemma, which is going to be used, this basically sheds some light on how continuity and measurability. As such, let me make it clear that continuity involves continuity basically in a topological space means or inverse image of every open set is open. But the sets which are using to define the measure, they can contain open, closed, as well as their countable intersection. Because Borel sigma algebra allows all that. There are countable intersections and unions. So countable intersection of open sets need not be open. That's the glitch. That's why we continuity and measurability at a first sight may not look related, but it so happens, as the next theorem will show, that this comes to the major theorem of today's talk, that if I have a real valued function on measure means it can be approximated by continuous functions on compact sets. That is, you can have an compact set K epsilon for each epsilon. You can have compact sets K epsilon which approximate the interval very well, and then on which this f restricted to K epsilon is simply f. So just a minute, it should be f epsilon restricted to K epsilon. A small typo here. F epsilon restricted to K sub epsilon. Okay, that is the continuous function which I am claiming to exist. If restricted to compact, it matches with f. That is, and this compact set can be chosen as close to the whole interval as one wants. That is the state. That is what the theorem is stating. Using theorem is stating. So I'll take a pause here, and because think about this theorem, that is another comment is due. That is, maybe it will turn out to be a slightly heuristic, because it may not, but ultimately that's what is involved in the proof. That is, the comment is this, that given a measurable set, Lebesgue measurable subset of real line, that is, I'll take it to be bounded. Bounded means it the whole thing lies inside a finite interval. Then such a set can be approximated by from outside by an open set, or rather more generally an G delta set, as it is called, countable intersection of open sets, and from within a F sigma set, that is a countable intersection of countable union of closed sets. So basically what this means is measurable sets can be approximated up to epsilon, for each epsilon, by Borel sets. That is the so you have the remark. The point I am trying to make is that you have something for the interval at the interval level, and because you are taking linear combinations of characteristic functions of the interval. Characteristic function means it is one on that set and zero outside. So because you are taking that, this a similar result that about Lebesgue measure at the interval level can be has an analog in that the measurable function can be approximated by continuous functions as close as 1 watts. So this whatever is happening at this interval level could be lifted in some sense to the function level. And so of course this is just heuristics, but the precise proof goes as follows. Any questions so far? First of all, so what I did here to prove this theorem is a continuous function and a compact set, which approximates f on a compact set up to order epsilon. And so it is well known that on complex uniform limits of continuous functions, a sequence of continuous functions is continuous. So basically I'm trying to choose not f epsilon directly given an epsilon, but a sequence f which converges to f epsilon. So, and this is by the previous lemma that which I will recall here. Measurable function on an interval, provided the interval has finite measure, it can be approximated in measure by a sequence of continuous functions. So roughly speaking, this lemma states that continuous measurable means at least by convergence in measure, it means continuous. Measurable and continuous are related from the point of view of convergence in measure. So if in our case we are given a measurable function and we can find at least in measure we can find a sequence of continuous functions which converges to it. That is the first step, that sequence of continuous functions fn converges in measure to f. It can be always be chosen on by the previous lemma. And next, the Riese's theorem, which says that this we have chosen a rather weak. The whole idea of the proof that we have chosen a rather weak result, that is convergence in measure, only in measure, which implies neither almost everywhere convergence nor this pointwise convergence, nor let alone uniform convergence. So, but Riese's theorem at least guarantees, if not, you can't guarantee that a sequence of a subsequence of Fn will converge almost everywhere. But measure. But Riese's theorem comes to rescue, and it says that we can choose a subsequence of Fn which tends to F almost everywhere. Measure in general does not imply almost everywhere, but it is true once you pass to a subsequence. So we choose a subsequence without, we choose a subsequence of Fn, converges to F almost everywhere, and then use Egorov's theorem that such a sequence is it can be approximated on measurable sets. I am which I approximate I arbitrarily close, and on which f, that is I can choose a measurable set epsilon, f epsilon, which approximates the interval as well as wants, and still Fn epsilon, Fn is converging to F uniformly. So I am just reversing all the steps shown in that earlier modes of convergence slide. That is 1 implies 2 implies 3 implies 4. That is, I'm just trying to reverse under additional hypothesis. That is, convergence in measure, it implied almost everywhere convergence, provided I pass to a subsequence. Now, almost everywhere does not imply a pointwise, let alone uniform. So, but it is true up to certain approximation. That is, given a measurable set of epsilon, I can choose this a measurable set of epsilon inside this interval I, such that Fn tends to F uniformly. That is, the convergence is uniform up to some set of measure epsilon by 2. Okay. So next, so what we have accomplished is this: convergence in measure was a weak thing. We took almost everywhere and then came to uniform. Okay. Now here is the crux of the matter. F is the, so can it be within a finite interval? So this is where finiteness of the interval is necessary. That otherwise, if the same theorem can hold for sigma finite measures, that is the whole real line, etc. But if you have a compact set which approximates epsilon, that is, and is bounded, is f epsilon lies inside this bounded interval I, we can approximate it by a compact set. In fact, you must have heard the fact that the Lebesgue measure is inner regular. That is called a measurable set within by compact sets. That is called inner regular. And similarly, if a measurable set, if every measurable set in any measure space for that matter, if every measurable set can be approximated from without open sets from outside, and it is measure of the original set is the infimum of all that larger open sets, then it is called outer regular. So if it is both irregular and outer, here we are using the inner regularity of the Lebesgue measure. So let's go back one step. That is f epsilon. I chose a f epsilon measurable set which approximates I, and a further compact set which approximates f epsilon. This is possible because I is finite. I am using it. The Lebesgue measure is again epsilon by 2. Epsilon by 2. So the total measure of the set discrepant, that is where the I need where the I need to find a set k epsilon whose measure is less than epsilon, right? Which approximates the whole interval on which the f epsilon restricted to that is same as f. So I find after approximating f epsilon itself by a compact set, I observe that f epsilon, again here another typo here, f epsilon, but it will on k epsilon it matches with f, so it's okay. Epsilon restricted to k epsilon is continuous. Why is it continuous? I have chosen this k epsilon to be compact, and these functions fn are continuous. They converge to f uniformly, and so it's the uniform limit of continuous functions. So f restricted to k epsilon is continuous. Epsilon restricted to k epsilon is continuous. So what we have done so far is we have constructed a continuous function, at least if not on the whole I, but on a compact subset of I, subset of I, k epsilon, which approximates it up to measure epsilon, that up to some large compact set f epsilon, there is a function. So now the question is, we require f epsilon to be continuous everywhere, that is on I. That is, I will go one slide. I require a continuous function f epsilon on a compact set which approximates this interval, and such that f epsilon restricted to k epsilon is simply f. That is the original function. So f restricted to k epsilon is f epsilon restricted to k epsilon is continuous, but that here the glitch is that we need f epsilon defined on I, and it further f epsilon should remain continuous on I. So now basic it is this is easy to accomplish, because given f epsilon restricted to k epsilon is a compact set, and how to extend a continuous function from a compact set outside a open set. There are, of course, big results like this T's extension theorem of topology, that a close whatever under some separation axioms this holds, that is given a compact set and open set containing it, your function will vanish with that on that compact set and vanish it outside that open set. But you don't require this, because it is here it will be easier, because if you already have a compact set k epsilon and you only want to extend it outside k epsilon. So how do you do that? That is you somehow select f epsilon. I mean, you are free to choose now outside this k epsilon. So join it the endpoints, attach the endpoints to the real line. That is how it proceeds. That is at least for step functions, it is easy to picture that given a continuous function, how it can be extended outside the compact set to the whole interval I. So given a continuous function here, you can insert, I mean, manually or outside k epsilon, you can insert this edges, that is segments, simply segments joining the real axis to the endpoint of the k epsilon. That is, it will look like a step function sort of, or a step function with endpoints joined to the real line. So that finally completes the proof that f epsilon, again these two are typos, f epsilon restricted to k epsilon, it's continuous. So let's recap the proof. We first proved the theorem under the if assumption of convergence in measure, but that is too weak. Then almost everywhere. Then uniform convergence, but because I can be approximated by compact sets, the whole uniform convergence implies that the limit function is continuous. Probably it should have been a different symbol, I guess. Yeah. So observe that f is continuous, and so finally, having constructed such a continuous function, at least on the compact set, I extend it to the whole interval. So after this any questions so far? There are a couple of typos, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yes. Any questions from students or?
I see only 3 students. Okay. But we
So
have.
now I think it is.
Yeah. Ask. Deepak is asking something. Ask.
No, I'm not asking. I said it is fine, I think.
You said it's fine. Okay. We have discussed some of the things in as an assignment or something. Those what you call as Egrov's theorem was an assignment, I think. So other things are okay, I think.
So they already knew this.
Yeah, some of them. Yeah, some of this. Yes. Yeah.
Some of these, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, I will conclude. There are two important remarks in order. That convergence in measure, it looks slightly, the definition which was shown is not, it looks very awkward. That is, let me do it. Yes, this definition of convergence in measure is not very easy to work with. Because every time you can't hope to do all this approximate f first, and wherever the discrepancy is more than c, take measure of that set and take limit. You can't hope to do it every time. So there is a slicker definition of measure that it is metrizable, fortunately. That is, this metric given two measurable functions on of course x has to have finite measure for this to converge, integral converge. That's why I have assumed if x has a finite measure space, and given two measurable functions, I can define distance between them like this: integral of x, difference. If I just take difference can be unbounded. But at the same time, I don't want to identify functions which are not equal almost everywhere. So the idea is make this f minus g absolute value bounded. So what I do is, this also defines a metric. The integrand, whole integrand is a metric, and it is a bounded metric on that face. Why is it bounded? Because numerator is strictly less than the denominator. All quantities are positive, so it is bounded, and so this is less than 1, and the whole thing is, of course, it does not have measure greater than mu x, which we have assumed to be finite. So convergence's measure can be defined by this slick definition. However, almost everywhere convergence, it is not metrizable or even topologizable, which means that it is not never given by a topology. And as far as you'll enjoy proving these two results, of course, that is almost everywhere convergence is not given by metric, at least the metrizability part. Topologizability is slightly more difficult. It involves some metrization theorems from topology, but that almost everyone convergence cannot be described by metric is not very difficult to establish. So I hope this, I'll conclude the lecture here. And first of all, any questions on any of the topics?
Sir, I have a small doubt. In the
Yes,
convergence in measure, this metric defined here, is that actually a metric? Because it can differ by almost everywhere. It can differ almost
yeah.
everywhere. I mean, it can be same almost everywhere, but different on a measure zero set, right?
See, a basic, what we do, the whole point of the whole point of measurable defining measurable functions is that you can have a null set on which the function f is defined only up to null sets, which means that you can always choose a null set or null subset of its domain, and then on that null subset you can define f to be 0 or anything you want, because it is null. And because null sets don't matter to us, this integrand won't be affected. At least for measurable functions, it won't be affected. We identify.
No, okay.
Yes.
No, I was just asking, is it a metric? I mean, it won't be a metric, that's all.
It's up to, no, you you identify function up to zero. It's like L1, L2, although it's like those spaces. That's all.
Okay, fine.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, so f minus g, that is the difference itself, is the metric. That is numerator of the integrand is a metric that is defined by the triangle equality. but to make the metric bounded and so that the whole measure space is involved, we have defined this integrand instead. 1 plus this is a trick to make it bounded and integrating over mu x, because we can do this because x has finite measure. By contrast, it is convergence almost everywhere, as I said, you do such things. You can't hope, you must hope to topologize it. Okay, then I will conclude the, but are there any more questions, first of all? I can.
Okay, if you have some questions, you can ask. Otherwise, we'll thank him and then stop. Is this fine?
Okay.
Any question?
Actually, some of the students are willing to have the slides. I can email it to Professor Srinivasan,
Yeah.
and probably else I can put it on Moodle also, or share it on Moodle. That would be easier.
We are
because
actually, we are archiving in some Google archive, so you can send it to me. That's
I
fine.
see. I see.
Yeah, you can send
Okay.
it to a different site. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Chaitanya. So if
Oh, thank you so much.
okay, are there any questions? Somebody was saying something. Yeah.
Sir, I was just asking about the further presentations.
That we will.
Yes.
I will send an email about it. We will discuss it later.
Oh,
I'll send
okay.
you an email, okay. So tonight or by Sunday night, I will send you an email. Okay. Okay. So I will conclude this.
And, okay, before we conclude, could we possibly decide the timing for the Fourier analysis lecture, if at all?
So you can choose
When-
anytime. Next
I have to
Wednesday
choose,
or
right?
next Friday.
I can. Wednesday is fine for me.
Okay, Wednesday. Okay. Okay.
And Fourier analysis up to Riemann-Lebesgue lemma. That is what I intend to discuss,
So,
basically.
no, the point is actually most of the students have done Fourier series, but some few students, some 3-4 students, they haven't done. So it's basically for them. So don't get disappointed when you don't see too many people. Okay. So
Okay, that's not a problem.
they have already done an analysis 3 in their BSc. So but some students wrote to me that they haven't done. So this is basically for them. Okay.
Okay.
Okay then. Okay, thank you. So I will end the session.
So, sir,
Thank you, sir.
and can like the further presentations be held a little earlier, let's say at 4:30 p.m. or something?
Yeah, we will do some other time. We will not be doing in the same time. We will have different timing. Maybe together on the same day we'll have many presentation. Okay. We'll talk about
Okay.
it. Okay then. Okay, I will end the session. Goodbye.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.